Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to 7th Street. Sorry it's been a little while since my last video. I've actually been pretty busy directing a musical of all things. Evil Dead, the musical. It will be playing at the Funhouse Lounge on June 22nd, so if you're in the PDX area, definitely come check it out. Check it out on Facebook as well. It's got a fan page. I've been working on a couple of different projects as well. It's been eating up some of my time. Getting ready to go on vacation. So, yeah, but I know you don't want to hear my fucking excuses. Anyway, I thought today we would do 7th Street Productions' top 5 favorite directors. Alright, at the top of my list at number 5 is Todd Browning. And Todd Browning makes this list really for just 3 films: Dracula, Freaks, and Mark of the Vampire. Obviously, Freaks is one of my top 10 favorite films of all time. It's not a horror film at all. It's just sort of been adopted by the horror community because, you know, it's really a movie that's in a genre all of its own. It's really not even worth getting into. You just really have to see the movie for yourself and know that it completely ruined Todd Browning's career. The movie was actually banned for a number of years after it came out, and it wasn't until the 60s that the counterculture sort of rediscovered the film, and it became a really popular, like, midnight movie in the early 60s when, you know, all the beatniks would get together in, like, San Francisco and LA, and they would go to these local grindhouses and get stoned and watch Freaks. It's a really bizarre film with a really bizarre tone that in the last act of the movie, it's got horrific sequences. So it's, like I said, it's not really a horror film, but it's been adopted by the community. And then obviously Mark of the Vampire, which is sort of a loose retelling of London After Midnight, the lost Lon Chaney film. It's another fantastic movie, really short runtime. I think it's only 61 minutes long, so, you know, if you've only got an hour to spare, definitely check out Mark of the Vampire. And Dracula. I don't think I have to say anything else about Dracula. It's fucking Dracula. Number 4 on my list is William Castle. He had to be on this list somewhere, and unfortunately he just kept getting bumped back. William Castle is one of my favorite directors just because William Castle was really the last dying breath of movies being an event, you know? He always had these gimmicks. And some of my favorite movies of his have just the more ridiculous gimmicks, like The Tingler. They put the buzzers in the seats and blacked out the theater and started yelling, you know, "The Tingler is loose in the audience!" Also, House on Haunted Hill, which is probably my favorite film of his. It was the first film to be shot in Emergo, which was really just like plastic skeletons on string that would like go across the audience. He, like I said, he was the last gasp of the theater being an event. And, you know, if there's one thing that I could go back in time and experience, it would be back when, you know, going to see a movie was like a whole big event and they were hosted at these movie palaces. He kind of stands in a league of his own. At number 3 on my list is Lucio Fulci. And although he's not my favorite director, you know, he does have my favorite style. All of his films are always so atmospheric and, you know, just the way that they're edited and the way that they're shot, you know, just these combinations of really wide moving shots and extreme close-ups. He's always concentrating on people's eyes. And as an amateur filmmaker, he's probably the director that I rip off the most. I just, you know, every time you watch one of his films, they're just so unmistakably his. You know, nobody else has that style. And, you know, I really respect the man. You know, he had a really interesting, really varied career, and he took a lot of shit and, you know, kind of died, you know, he kind of had this upward momentum in his career, and then for the last 20 years of his career, it was just a steady drop downward, and unfortunately he you know, died, you know, never really redeeming himself. So, you know, he's kind of got this this underdog quality to him too that I really like. You know, there are a lot of people out there who are huge Italian splatter fans, but they usually gravitate more towards Dario Argento and Lamberto Bava, and Fulci, it kind of always seems to be that people think of him a little bit as like the redheaded stepchild. You know, his films aren't really considered art. You know, people argue that a lot of these other directors have better cinematography, and of course, a lot of other Italian directors, you know, sort of, you know, have had, you know, dips in their career, but they always seem to regain themselves. And so Fulci is never very high on most people's lists, it seems. So he's also got that element to him too. So that's why he makes my number 3. Alright, number 2 on my list is Ishiro Honda. I don't even feel like I have to explain myself here. Godzilla movies. Ishiro Honda directed all of the greatest Toho science fiction films from the first cycle, the Showa series. You know, these movies just had a huge impact on my life. I think that I have spent more hours watching Ishiro Honda films than anyone else, just because of the sheer rewatchability of those early Godzilla films, and, you know, movies like Matango, Rodan, Mothra, all the great early Showa Toho movies. And, you know, another interesting thing to note is that he's actually a really well-respected director in Japan. He didn't just do, you know, Toho kaiju movies. He was actually really well-respected by Akira Kurosawa. There's actually a lot of stories of, you know, actors who worked in Kurosawa films and Toho science fiction films. And, you know, Kurosawa was really picky about the actors that he would work with, like Takashi Shimura, who was considered at one point to be the greatest actor on the planet at that time. And he was in, you know, Godzilla. He was in Rodan. He was in Godzilla Raids Again. And Akira Kurosawa said, well, if Ishiro Honda is directing these films, they must be A pictures. All right, and at number 1 is George A. Romero. George A. Romero has directed my top 2 favorite films of all time. Aside from that, he created an entire genre. You know, he created the modern zombie movie. You know, we wouldn't have a lot of the movies that, you know, we wouldn't have had Fulci movies without Romero movies. So, you know, I think that the entire industry owes a lot more to George Romero than they give him credit for. You know, some other notable Romero films, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, obviously. But go ahead and check out The Dark Half, Monkey Shines, Creepshow. I mean, every single one of his movies are just top-notch. You know, there's not a Romero movie that I dislike. You know, even movies like Bruiser and Night Riders are extremely well done and have these, you know, these undertones to them. You know, everything that he writes is just so well done. So I have a lot of respect for George Romero. Well, there it is, guys. My top 5 favorite directors of all time. You know I love hearing from you, so leave a comment below letting me know who your favorite directors are. And they say that generosity does lead to a longer, healthier, and happier life. So make sure that you subscribe, follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. Until next time, guys.
But you won't remember anything.